What's up, Echo family? Man, it's a good Sunday to be together. Let me start with a question today. Have you ever felt like you put a lot of effort into something that just didn't produce the results that you hoped for? Like you really worked really hard, you like busted it, you were sweating, whatever it is that it might be, and you're like, I know it's gonna produce incredible results, and then you're like, man, is that all I get? You know, as a parent, one of the areas or one of the places I grew to really dislike, and maybe you can relate with this if you're a parent, is those places that trick your children into believing that the point system of arcades will lead you to a really great prize at the end. You know what I'm talking about? Like you go and you're like doing the arcade stuff and the games, and it's like, Dad, Mom, give me more money because there's a great prize if I get enough tickets. And it's like 1,000 tickets or 1,000 points or whatever it might be. And then you go out there and you get all this stuff and you turn it in for a lollipop. You're like, is that worth it? Well, you know, this week I went with my son to one of these arcade places. And we were playing, and it was this digital kind of point system. And, you know, we're gaining points as we're shooting hoops and doing kind of all that kind of stuff. And at the end, after we spent $40 and we had like thousands of points, I saw him go to the machine and exchange our thousands of points for a really cool balloon. And so we took the balloon, and we were staying at a hotel this week. And because our house was getting fumigated, so there's 5 of us in one hotel room, super fun. And when we're doing this, in the middle of the night, there's this glowing light that keeps waking me up. And I'm like, what is going on? And I open my eye, and there is that freaking balloon. It had a light in it. And it's like glowing in my room and blinking and keeping me up at night. The very thing that's supposed to be a prize is keeping me up at night. Doesn't it feel like a metaphor for life in a way? Like you're like, man, I worked really hard for whatever this is, and now I can't sleep at night because that very thing I worked hard for is stressing me out. Maybe for you, it's like work, really. It's like you like, if I get the job, I'll be in a better place, and then you get the job, and now you're in a worse place than you were before. Maybe it's a school or a friend group, and you're like, if I just get into that friend group, into that school, into that class, whatever it might be, things would be a little bit better. Then you get there, and like, I'm just as isolated as I was before. Or maybe you're like trying to find connection desperately, and someone tells you, like, go to the dating app because they find the compatible partner for you, and you go through that whole assessment thing, and then you find the compatible partner, you go on a date, and you realize that person is super weird. And you're like, I'm compatible with that, which that might mean you're super weird too. You start questioning yourself, or maybe you're trying to get into that like threshold of income in the Bay Area. You know, if I just get like this amount more money, I'll be in a better place, and I'll be able to give, and I'll be able to serve, and I'll be able to be fulfilled. And then you get to that other threshold, and you just have to pay more taxes now. And you're like, man, I don't know if this is really what I signed up for. And I think this, like, no matter who you are here today, like you might be here exploring faith in Jesus or deepening your faith today, we share this in common, this drive to find fulfillment for things that are not just temporary pleasure, but things that are actually going to last. We also share the fact that sometimes in trying to find that fulfillment, we lack satisfaction. Like we come out empty on the other side of this. And that's what the series has been all about, by the way, Verified. It's trying to find what's real in the midst of so much that's artificial. Because the world does offer a lot of ways to fill the gap in our hearts, but a lot of times those things feel like they cause a temporary fulfillment or satisfaction, but then an hour, a day, a few days later, you're back to feeling kind of empty. You're like, is that real? Is it real or is it fake? Sometimes the pursuit of happiness feels like chasing the wind. Like, I just don't know if I can ever grasp it or catch it. So today we're going to look at a person that lived 3,000 years ago. And if you're new to church, you're going to be surprised at how some of these ancient people in human history can speak to your life because God's word is inspired. We're going to learn from King Solomon. But before we break down one of the books that he wrote, we're going to just look at his resume for a second so we get on the same page around who King Solomon was. And there's another book called First Kings that talked about some of the kings of Israel, and they unpacked him. So King Solomon was a king in Israel for 40 years in 1970 BC, quite a long time ago. And here's what it says about him. It says, God gave Solomon very great wisdom and understanding and knowledge, as vast as the sands of the seashore. Like more than anyone you can imagine. In fact, his wisdom exceeded all of the wise men in East and wise men of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else. His fame spread throughout surrounding nations. In history, you can still find stories of Solomon's wealth and his popularity. In fact, in verse 32, it says he composed 3,000 proverbs. A lot of them are in our Bibles, and he wrote 1,005 songs. He could speak with authority about all kinds of plants, from the great cedar of Lebanon to the tiny hyssop that grows from the cracks in the wall. Have you met that kind of guy? It's like knows a little bit about everything in life, and they can tell you about that bug that landed on your hand. That's Solomon. And it says this, he could also speak about animals, about birds, about small creatures, about fish, and kings from every nation sent their ambassadors to listen to the wisdom of Solomon. He was an impressive dude. To put it in modern day terms, you can combine the wealth and whatever achievements of Elon Musk, Sundar from Google, and Bill Gates, and they still be lesser than King Solomon is what he's trying to say. Like this guy stood out in history as a person that achieved a lot, gained a lot of wisdom, and was superior to most people in his day in terms of what appears to be success. But here's the thing. Solomon had major pitfalls, parts of his life that were out of line, and he documented his pursuit of fulfillment in a little book called Ecclesiastes. Now, I'm just going to give you a warning. Ecclesiastes is one of the weirdest books of the Bible, like super weird. In fact, Christians and Jews debated, should this even be in the Bible? Because if you take this book out of context, it can lead you to a great path of destruction in your life. In fact, if you're one of those people that's like, God, I'm not feeling good today, would you just speak to me? And you kind of do like the random verse, and then you point to, you might land in Ecclesiastes, and it might tell you something like this: everything is meaningless, says the teacher. It's completely meaningless. You're like, shoot, that's what I thought was true. And now the Bible confirmed it for me. I mean, there's all kinds of weird stuff. In fact, let me read to you one more. If you're maybe a young person and you're trying to find out how to live life, Ecclesiastes, young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it and do everything you want to do. I don't recommend doing exactly that, by the way. It's a book that out of context can lead you to a really bad place. It can be very depressing. But Solomon's raw honesty about life's frustration, when combined with his conclusion, can lead to great, great fulfillment. So this is one of the books you have to read entirely or kind of understand the meaning of it behind the scenes as well. But if you do, you'll be able to find great, great wisdom for life. So what Solomon does is he's after fulfillment. And he's like, I'm going to try everything in my power to figure out what fills the human soul. So I said to myself, this is chapter 2. He says, come on, let's try pleasure. Have you done that? Like, I'm empty. I'm just going to try pleasure. So he told himself, I'm going to try. Look, everything I could think of. So he says, he looked for pleasure. He couldn't find it. After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. So he's like, okay, that didn't work. Let me just try alcohol. Let me see if that does the job. It didn't work. And then he says, I also try to find meaning by building huge homes for myself. So he's like, okay, maybe that's the answer. I just got to get a better place to live, make it bigger, better than everybody else. So he literally built palace after palace after palace. Some of the ruins are still out there today. It's crazy to think about. And then he's still not fulfilled. So he bought slaves, both men and women, and others in his household. So he's like, let me just try to purchase people. Didn't work. I owned large flocks. He said, I collected great sums of silver and gold and treasures. He's like, let me try money. Let me see if it fulfills me. Nothing. So I hired wonderful singers, he said. Both men and women had many beautiful concubines, which are basically people he hired to have sex with him. He's like, I'm going to try whatever I can to fill my soul with pleasure. And he literally says, I denied myself no pleasure. And then you get to verse 17. So I came to hate life, because everything done here under the sun is just so troubling. Everything is meaningless. It's like chasing the wind. Can you say that phrase with me, chasing the wind? 1, 2, 3. See, think about that phrase with me. He says, I came to hate all my hard work here on earth. I must leave to others everything I've earned. He's just being real, like being really raw right now. Who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I've gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. How meaningless. Like I make all this money, but then I die. And then the person that takes it after me, I don't know if they're good or bad. It feels kind of meaningless. He's just being honest. So I gave up in despair, questioning all the value of my hard work in this world. Have you done that? Like, why am I in school again? Like, why am I studying so hard for that test? Like, why am I working my butt off? Why am I doing 7-day work days or whatever? Like, why am I doing all this? He's questioning all of it. What's the value? Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill, he says. Then they must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. Welcome to church. Isn't that exciting news? He goes on. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It's just meaningless. So I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in work. And then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God, for who can eat and enjoy anything apart from him? God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to those who please him. And then he goes right back into the hole. He says, but if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. This too is meaningless, like, say it with me, chasing the wind. You ever feel like that? Like you're just trying to fill up some kind of gap, and it just feels like you're chasing the wind? Close your eyes for just a second and imagine yourself chasing the actual wind. Doesn't it feel a little foolish? You're like trying to catch it. You can feel it in your skin. You're like, I need something. You can't hold it. It feels like it's meaningless. Sometimes it feels like life is like this. Like maybe if I just get enough wisdom, it's empty. Maybe if I just work enough, it's like I can never really fulfill. Maybe if I just get enough wealth or pleasure, whatever it might be, and then you still find yourself in this place, you're like, I don't think that is it. And he expresses so strongly his emotion after all this. He says, I came to hate life because everything done here under the sun is just so troubling. It's like chasing the wind. So you might be here exploring faith, or maybe you're just deepening your faith with us, and I think we have this in common. We all have put our effort into things that felt like they would fulfill us, but then they really don't. Maybe you're actually here today because you're trying to find hope in the midst of like a broken situation. Maybe you're at work and you're like, man, I started this job with all kinds of hopes and dreams, and maybe God even would use my life, and now you find yourself just in a cycle that feels pretty empty, and you even disconnected more from faith than before and from doing things that are meaningful, and you find yourself hating the person you've become. Or maybe you're like in social media and you're like trying to connect, right? Like I just need to find connection. And we've done this. Like I just need to like connect with somebody. So you start to look at their life and you're trying to connect with others, and before you know it, you're not just connecting, now you're comparing. And you're comparing your life with the best version of somebody else's life. And 3 hours later, you find yourself in greater despair and depression than when you started finding connection. There's some things in this life that People say will fulfill us if you do this, and it's really the norm. Like if you just work, if you just gain money, if you just buy the house, if you just get as many people to like you and follow you as possible, maybe something will be different. And then you find yourself in a place where it's like, I don't really know if that's it. But for me, one of those areas that I've chased fulfillment in, that I've had to really be honest with myself, is this addiction to find meaning and identity in what I produce in life, apart from who I am in God. And I've had to fight this for many years of my life. Like, will God maybe love me a little bit more if I just do a little bit more for him? Like maybe if I just serve enough people, maybe if I just solve enough problems, that my value will be better than when I don't. And there's nothing bad with trying to achieve. I think there's good, virtues in trying to be a person that achieves results. But when that becomes your identity, the moment your achievement is over, you're back to emptiness. It's taken a long time for God to rewire my brain to help me understand that who I am in him is more important than what I do for him. That when you recognize you're a son and daughter of God, that it changes you in a different way than when you're just trying to earn some kind of approval. What are you chasing after? Like, what's the thing that makes you get up in the morning? You're like, I'm gonna go and chase after this. The answer to this question has a lot to do with how we fill the gaps of our hearts. What actually fulfills? Here's how Solomon felt after chasing things that didn't fulfill. In verse 20, he literally says, I gave up in despair, questioning the value of my hard work in this world. And these are the words of a person who was one of the richest, wealthiest, most comfortable person to ever live in human history. And let's be honest, we're actually very similar in a way to him, because we're living in the generation that has the most comfort, the most access to information, the most wealth than almost every other generation in history. We have things at our fingertips where literally you can order food from a restaurant an hour away and have it delivered to your doorsteps. You can get a ride without even being bothered by a human now. They just come pick you up at your house, a robot car to take you to where you want to go. You can do just about anything with technology, and yet this generation in the last decade has experienced a sharp decline in mental health and just depression, feeling like I'm disconnected from life in spite of all the wealth and comfort that we have. Something is still missing. In fact, let me show you the data. Let me show you the research from this past year of what's been happening to the rising generation. It goes like this. 1 out of 3 18 to 24-year-olds right now has some kind of mental diagnosable disorder. 1 out of 4 has some kind of anxiety disorder. 1 out of 5 has a major depressive episode every single year. 1 out of 8 has serious suicidal thoughts. Almost 3 of 10 suffer from alcohol and drug disorders. And listen to this, overall 50% of college-aged individuals say they often experience feelings of anxiety, fear, and suicidal thoughts. 50%. We have more access to people, to information, to comfort than ever before, and yet sharp decline in being fulfilled. Does it have to be this way? This is the journey that Solomon took. And maybe you're trying to find that hope. Like, my marriage is falling apart, and you're like, I'm on the brink of divorce. I need some kind of hope. Or you're overwhelmed by the amount of debt you have, and you're like, I just need to figure out how to get out of the hole. You're lacking purpose in your career. You feel isolated in school, and you're like Solomon. You're asking, is all this meaningless? Like, is it really all meaningless, or is there more to life? And I think in the midst of Solomon's crazy ramblings and all his journaling of his raw emotion, you find something really beautiful. There's actually a pathway to fulfillment in his writings. And it starts with this, if you're taking notes. It starts with the acknowledgement of the struggle. See, this is the thing that people tell you you should not do, that Solomon does. Just be honest. Like, I have a struggle. Like we're taught in our day right now to just put up like the beautiful, best parts of our lives so everybody can see this artificial part of who we are. And Solomon, as crazy as he is, you got to respect the guy for just acknowledging the truth. He's like, I've tried wealth, I've tried porn, I've tried women, I've tried success and houses, whatever it might be, and I still feel empty. See, the beginning of finding healing and wholeness is the acknowledgement, I have a struggle. In verse 18, he literally says, I came to hate all my hard work here. I have to leave it to others, and I don't know if I like that, just being honest. There's a woman that came in even today in tears and was talking to me, and she said, I just feel like I'm the worst parent. I yelled at my 3-year-old daughter this morning, and I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And I can relate. I've yelled at my kids. I felt like shameful about what I've done. I've lied. I've done all. There's something about just the acknowledgement of truth. You're like, you don't need to pretend. It's one of the things I love about our church, that you can be who you are and come and be honest about. You don't have to pretend. We don't do religion at Echo. We're honest. In fact, there's people that leave our church because our pastors share too many struggles. Let's just be real. All of us have moments where you wake up in the morning like, I don't know if what I'm doing is leading me to the fulfilled life that I long for. Evaluate what fulfills you. And I think Solomon recognized a profound truth. The only way to escape the constant bombardment of emptiness is to acknowledge that life is short, it's filled with problems, and I just have a struggle here. Like there's something that is not adding up for me. And in doing so, when you quiet yourself and you acknowledge I have a problem, I have a sin, I have a brokenness, you start to understand how to shift your perspective. And that's what we see next happening to Solomon. He's like, man, I'm just going to be honest. And the moment he was honest, listen to what he says. I decided there's nothing better to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. He's like, I've tried all this stuff. Then I realized. It's like a moment. Like when you stop lying about the fact that you have it all together, then you can realize these pleasures, the things that actually fulfill you, the things that are set apart from all the rest, are from the hand of God. The only thing that will fulfill you comes from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? Everything else seems to not matter. After exploring all these different ways to fill the gap, here's what I'm realizing. I got to shift my perspective. I can't keep going to the same thing over and over again, hoping that it'll fill up my void. At some point, you have to admit, I have a struggle, and I got to shift my perspective. The recognition of this truth changes so much. You know, earlier today, a young adult came up to me and said, man, I wish that someone would have told me earlier what Jesus can do in my life. He said he came here as an atheist. His friend invited him and had all these, he's like, I tried girls, I tried career, I tried money, everything felt empty. Now I have Jesus, everything's changed. I just wish I had him earlier. And he's in his 20s. There's something about this. It's like when you recognize the shift of perspective happens when you have that, and you realize that the only things worth chasing after are actually the things that come from the hands of God. You just want everybody to know. You just want to let go of everything else that brings temporary pleasure. In his most famous sermon ever, Jesus challenged people to change their perspective. And in fact, he compares Solomon's teaching even to his teaching in a contrasting kind of way. Let me show it to you. His primary goal is to help people shift from a self-centered life to a life that is centered on hope. And here's what Solomon did in comparison to Jesus. Solomon would say things like this: who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I've gained by my skill and my hard work under the sun. How meaningless. That's how he thought of work. Then Jesus said, "Why worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing. Yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they." Solomon's like, what's the point? Just work, work, work. And Jesus is saying, what if you trust the one who is actually to provide for you beyond your work? When it comes to wealth, Solomon would say, I must leave to others everything I've earned. He's like in this chaos. Jesus said, don't stir up treasures on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves cannot break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there your desires will be also. So different. When it comes to anxiety, Solomon would write, their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It's all meaningless. He's like, man, what's the point of all this? It's all so stressful. Jesus would say, can all your worries add a single moment to your life? What if you shift your perspective? Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. And lastly, Solomon would say, man, I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in work. Let me just try. Jesus says, actually, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything that you need. If you chase after all the other stuff, it'll feel like you're chasing after the wind. And Jesus says, if you chase after the kingdom, if you chase after things that matter, if you chase after my presence, if you place your faith in me, you can do things that will last, and your fulfillment will be very different than the stuff that is artificial in this world. See, one of my favorite things about faith is that faith is contagious. When you're around people of faith, your faith grows. When you're around people that believe things are possible, when you're around people that place their trust in one that is greater than them, you start to place your trust in someone who's greater than them. This is why there's power in being the church, in being in community, in being gathered even like this. In fact, if you haven't yet been to one of our encounter nights, I want to invite you to make space for this because you'll understand what I'm talking about. This Thursday night is our encounter night. It's at the Sunnyvale campus this month. Encounter night is a once-a-month gathering where we just go chasing after the presence of God. And I have heard now, so many people say, man, in those nights I've experienced and encountered God's presence in a way that fully transformed my life. See, one moment in the presence of Jesus will fill you up more than 100 moments with things that are artificially placed in your life to fulfill you. This is what Jesus is saying. Make the kingdom of God your primary concern. But then it goes to the next step, which is perhaps the hardest one. See, once you acknowledge your struggle and you shift your perspective, there's now a call to just surrender control. This is the moment that you have to realize, man, I've tried everything. I've tried all the other stuff and nothing seemed to fulfill. So God, I'm just admitting I have a struggle. And I'm just admitting right now I need to shift my perspective to see things different than I have been seeing them. I need to now acknowledge the only things that fill me up are from God. In fact, Solomon said it this way. He says, God is the one that gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to those who please him. In other words, without God, there is nothing that is truly fulfilling in life. This is why Jesus says, I came to bring you life, and life in its fullest. Until we recognize this, we keep chasing and chasing and chasing stuff that just will leave us empty. Let's be real. I wonder what you're chasing after. What's the thing that's like your motivation right now? What would it look like for us as a community of faith even to be the kind of people that model to the world what it's like to chase after God? What would it look like instead of going to like media to decompress at the end of the day every single time and thinking that's going to actually solve a problem? What if we started to chase after God's words and say, God, would you feed me? Feed my soul. Let me get your words into me. What if when we wake up in the morning, instead of going straight to just whatever notifications and emails at work, we literally would say, God, I fear you. I want to know you. I'll chase after you. What if instead of numbing our bodies with substances that are just there to hide the real feelings we have, we began to chase after the God who created our feelings, the God who holds life in his hand, who invites us into his presence. The reason why so many feel like they can't experience God is because they're competing. God is competing with other priorities. And Jesus made it very clear, you can't have competing priorities with God. In fact, in Matthew 6, it's recorded, Jesus saying this, no one can serve two masters. You will hate one and love the other, you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money at the same time. You can't serve God and try to pursue your career as number one. You can't serve God and try to make money your greatest achievement. You can't pursue God and try to make relationships the thing that fill you up as your primary thing. You can't. This is what Solomon came to the conclusion. In fact, at the very end of his letter, he finishes by saying this, here now is my final conclusion. After I've chased it all, after all of this, fear God and obey his commands. For this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, good or bad. See, the fear of God is not being scared of God. In fact, God is a loving Father. The fear of God is approaching God in light of who he actually is, much greater than us. It's us understanding when you know that life is in his hands, you start to surrender yourself to this God. When you understand, man, I have a struggle and I need to confess that. You start to understand I need to shift my perspective. Then you say, God, I just need to acknowledge there is nothing good apart from you. I wonder what your step is today. See, we have a vision here at this church that we actually believe that there will be a day that this Bay Area will be known not just for technology and innovation, but it'll be known as a place that echoes the love of God to the rest of the world. But for that to happen, it requires people that stop pretending. People that say, I want to acknowledge there's a struggle here. Like, I want to be real. I want to acknowledge there's a sin in my life and I need a Savior. I need to acknowledge that. In fact, maybe that's your step today. So you're like, you've never acknowledged your sin before God, and there's no solution for sin if you don't acknowledge it. Just being honest about it. That's what the scriptures actually says. If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, that you will be saved from the consequence of sin. The consequence of sin is death, which is separation from the God of life. And until you call out on Jesus, you're going to be subject to death, to separation from the one who longs for you, who chases after you. The first step is just acknowledging, God, I'm broken and I need someone greater than I to solve the thing I cannot solve. If you haven't done that yet, this is your moment to just say, Jesus, I need you. For others, you just need a shift of perspective today. Like you've been chasing stuff that won't fill you up, and today is like, I need to just acknowledge the fact I need to look up. I need to go after things that matter. I need to make my job about Jesus. I need to make my career about my mission in life. I need to go to school and study and parent, all in light of what God wants for my life, not what I want for my life. This is Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane before the cross saying, God, your will be done, not my own. That's the life of surrender. It is not partial surrender where we say, God, have my time, but don't have my wallet. God, have my marriage, but don't have my parenting. God, have my Sunday, but don't have my Monday. That's for me. What God wants from us And the path to fulfillment is a life that says, God, all I am, all I have, completely, radically yours. When we acknowledge that, the Spirit of God breathes life into our soul. Do you long for that life? Sometimes the beginning of that life is just one little step. The step to surrender, the step to acknowledge sin, the step to confess to somebody where you've been, the step to begin to serve, to make your life about something greater than yourself, the step to share your faith, the step to just acknowledge the addiction. What's the step for you? God's saying, this is the moment. Like, don't wait. Learn from a king 3,000 years ago that spoke of the longing that we all share in every generation. That instead of chasing things that are like wind, we can chase the Spirit of God that actually fills the void of the human heart. As we close our time together, I want you to watch a story of a family that took one step. In fact, they came here to Echo as Buddhists, felt like there was a gap in their heart, decided to just take one step to begin to serve, to do things that are not just about them. And one person at a time began to experience transformation that comes from God. Check this
out. Sammy is one of my very best friends, very dependable, loyal, and someone you can always count on and trust, especially with your kids.
You know what animal this is. What is it?
A lot of parents, they are afraid to release the kids to me, but I always comfort and say they will be okay. It will always gonna be tough the first couple of times, but eventually, you know, they're gonna wanna come here, and that's my goal for them to come here. We teach in here, we do the worshiping, and we have activity in here as well too for the kids.
Sammy was invited back in 2018 to one of our mutual friends' baptism. And so she came, and we kept trying to invite her to come back. And I knew that something was happening inside of her because she started asking a lot of questions.
So I grew up in a very strong Buddhist family. My parents actually gave me to the monk to actually learn how to chant as well too, right? So growing up, I know that there's God. I know there's God, but I just don't know who God is.
I do remember one day, in the middle of service, she dismissed herself to the bathroom, came out. I knew something happened because she came out red-faced in tears, and I just knew in my heart that she was surrendering that day.
Sitting there and listening to the message, something stirred inside my heart. It got me a little bit emotional, but I couldn't really understand what it was, but it was enough for me to actually say yes to come and check it out again the next time that I got invited.
So when Sammy first started coming to church, she would come by herself, and she would serve first with her 2 daughters.
I love being nurturing to all those kids and just helping them learn more about God.
So her and her 2 daughters will serve. We could not get her husband to serve. Until one day, I think she lost her volunteer, and it was just her and her 2 girls at one point, and it was just too hard, so she asked her husband if he could help.
November is when I got baptized. In December, Sammy talked to me about joining the Kids Echo ministry, and January is when I took the leap of faith and become part of the kids ministry.
I'm actually able to impact them, and then I want to use this opportunity to also again, introduce God to them as well too. And at the same time, believe it or not, it was also helping me because here I am trying to figure out who God is as well too. I was also fairly new. But you know, God has his way of placing you in a place for you to know him, but at the same time to also serve his people as well too.
They know all the kids by their names and they show love.
Sunday, I felt like whatever happened to me in my weekday, I found my answer. I found my peace. I found my hope on Sunday. And that's what kept me coming every single Sunday is that hope, that peace, and I pray that everyone actually be able to have that in their life.